Oh, I'm glad I'm not getting dressed in the car on the way to work like usual. Anyway, I'm on my way to Bruno White Entertainment. We've got a big conference call today with Dan Dunmeyer on the CPAT video. I partner with Bruno White on our Department of Defense contract. Bruno White's a full-service production company. They're responsible for just about every aspect of production. And Dan Dunmeyer is the Corrosion Policy and Oversight Director for the Department of Defense. And I'm working with Bruno White on this project as the producer and the production manager. And I act as the liaison between Bruno White Entertainment and the Department of Defense. So we're working on the CPAT video. Dick Kinsey and Michael Carpenter are the ones that usually do this program, but Dan got the idea that he needed to put it on video so it could reach a wider audience, which makes perfect sense to us. So that's what we're doing. Hey guys. Hey, good morning.
Morning. Dan's online too.
Oh great, thanks.
Hi everybody. How y'all doing?
We're great.
Doing well, Dan.
Right now, Dan, you've got Lori and myself. This is Stacy, and Shane is here, and then Mitch will be joining us as well.
Were you involved at all in the pre-production?
No.
Sometimes the hardest part is the beginning, the initial calls, figuring out what we're all going to do. Yeah, give us a brief rundown. We know about the Corrosion Prevention Action Team and Dick and Carp doing presentations, but that's the extent of our knowledge, except...
A lot of people don't know what we're really up to now.
It's like every pitch that you get, especially from, a Department of Defense client. Straight to the point. He knows exactly what he wants. He's done this before, not video-wise, but presentation-wise.
I think we were clear on what his goal is.
It's a CPAT conference that's put on by Dick Kinsey and Michael Carpenter. But I guess he wants to put it on video so that people who can't make it to those events can actually learn about what the CPAT does and how important it is.
Other videos really all go by a script. Most of our DoD productions have. This one's a little bit different in that it's mostly going to be Carp and Dick doing their normal presentation, but we still have to have kind of like a screenplay, a guideline.
This is going to be a very technical presentation.
Right. One of our ongoing goals with Dan has been to try to make it entertaining, to make it interesting, so when people are getting this information, they sit there and pay attention.
Trying to keep people's interest, try to make it compelling. I don't know if we can make a compelling CPAT workshop or not. I have no idea.
Dan will call and say, I want to do this. I need to get this word out, and I've got to present this, and we've got to do this. And then Shane will be like, well, we can do this and this and this, and he comes up with all these great creative ideas that obviously everybody loves. And I think he starts at the top thinking that Dan will scale him down. The problem is Dan never scales him down.
You have to brainstorm. Are we going to go to a convention hall? Are we going to set it up as a super secret base? You think of all these crazy things, to try to make it cool, and then they, say, hey, come back to reality. And
it comes down to Lori and I to be like, yeah, we can't afford that.
Well, let us think about it and just like have some creative brainstorming at this end. And
once the creative is approved by the client, then you can really jump in and get into the meat of a project.
Presentation, some kind of PowerPoint behind them.
I know what government videos look like. I know what most people think about government videos. So I make sure I shoot exactly what they imagine, and at the same time, on the little sleight of hand, do something crazy.
And now Shane and I are going to kind of get together and go look at some other options creatively to see what else we can bring to it.
Hey, what you doing today?
What's up, man? Editing. Am I the only one you're going to be following?
A couple people.
I don't really want to do it right now.
Really? No.
Oh, hey, what you doing today?
Gonna do some storyboards today.
Cool, can I film you?
Yeah, but just woke up, so don't expect too much. So now I'm gonna go in, mock up some storyboards, and hopefully within an hour or so send it off to the client on telling him what we could do kind of for the budget. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is use a previs program and build our room. Okay, so there's our area we're gonna use. So we're gonna build that. And here is our room. We're looking down on the set. So now that we have our floor plan built out, I got a couple helpers coming in, Michael and Michelle. Okay guys, if we could start with our 2 host chairs at the front. Now I kind of laid in our chairs, kind of matching what we did out there in the studio. So next thing we want to do is throw in a camera. Let's do it about right here. Okay, and what this allows us to do is go in and actually look at it in a 3D environment. So we'll put in a guy, we'll move him in here. Okay, and we'll sit him down in our chairs, and we'll duplicate the guy. Okay, this will be our audience members, and we're just gonna throw them in real quick. Okay, so we just added one of our hosts in. We're gonna move him up to the chair. So let's look at the camera view. There's one host, duplicate him. Put a second host up there. Maybe we'll go into the host and say, let's give him a greenish jacket. Next thing we wanna mimic is maybe our green screen. Let's click on our back wall. Let's make our wall green. So now let's just go through and make our 8 cameras. We can dolly around, put another camera back here somewhere. Let's go look at that camera. Let's pan over a little bit, zoom in, tilt up. It's a nice shot, a lot of depth. So again, allows us to go in, throw in a bunch of cameras, and I can rough in a lot of the camera angles that I'd like to present to the client so they can see kind of what we're envisioning what the shoot would look like in front of our green screen. I'm just going to print these off and send them to the client and see what he thinks.
Stacy Cook is a producer, production manager on this job.
Hey, Dan, Stacy.
Her and I will work on the budget and where we're going to spend our dollars, and also with Shane, who will probably direct the project. So we'll say, you know, where do we want to spend our money best?
So now that we've got the ball rolling, we've had our calls, we know how much money we have to do this.
We were given this budget ahead of time, so we were trying to reach a creative goal and stay within a budget. And traveling, a lot of people are hiring extras, can get very costly.
So after the producers decided we had a logistic nightmare and a budgetary constraint on flying a bunch of people in, we came up with the multiple Dans concept. The initial concept kind of came out of a past project that Dan liked that had lots of Dans in it. And actually looking at the storyboards, when I made the storyboards for this, I used the exact same character in my 3D program for all of the audience. So putting those two things together, I just thought, hey, let's make Dan in each one of these seats. What it pretty much did for us is made the budget much cheaper, didn't have to fly in anybody. So I got my entire audience with a professional that knows what he's talking about, asking real questions, and didn't have to pay $1 for him. You know, his idea right away was I can dress up, and, you know, and all these different characters. I'll wear a hard hat for one, you know, I'll have the suit and tie on the other, you know, I'll be a clipboard taking notes on another guy. So he ran with the idea. So the feedback from the client took it to the next level. So Dan's the perfect client for a creative guy like me, the worst client for a producer, coordinator.
First of all, I think Shane and Dan One of their main goals in life is to give me an ulcer.
Well, you know, the whole idea of multiple Dans is a strange concept.
You mean Dan?
There would be people who say, you know, maybe one Dan is enough.
Sometimes one Dan is enough.
That's a joke, as Dan would say.
But, you know, I trust Shane, and, you know, he's never let us down before, so we're gonna make it happen.
Oh, good morning. Come on in. Appreciate you coming here, and I think it's kind of fantastic that you guys, I'm gonna get some coffee here, that you're putting everything in context by really showing what goes on behind the scenes. And this multiple Dan thing, it's really something else. And so instead of bringing a lot of people in from across the country, Shane explained that we're going to do a multiple Dans thing, and I'm going to be the guy that is representing the whole industry, whether that's guys from the lab, whether that's guys for engineers, scientists, everyone who touches a major program and has to support a major program. That's what I'm trying to portray. But that's a very interesting concept. Here's an array of some of the shirts I'm going to wear, and we'll just figure that out once we get to the studio. Put my jacket on, and I'm very, very excited once again about doing this. I just hope the people who watch it understand why we did it this way, and we're actually saving money. Come on, let's go. Takes a little while for the elevator to get here. Here it is. Are you hungry? I am. Sure hope you have an iron. A lot of my shirts are just plain wrinkled. Does Irene iron? I don't know. Beautiful day to have a shoot.
We all like to meet up, say hey, eat a little breakfast, and a lot of times that's where I really get into what we're going to do today.
So even if you guys are off, it's fine because we can put what you're talking about behind you later.
My job was to show up bright and early and make sure that we were getting everything set up correctly, so that when Shane came in as the director, we were ready to go ahead and snap to it and start shooting.
It's gonna be a long day. Got a lot of green screen work to do. Never done something where I had to make one person into 8.
Oh, I'll be running a camera and having fun.
So we have to hang some lights up in the ceiling. We have to make sure everything's really even so it keys easy. We'll get in there, we'll set everything up, make sure the cameras look good, and go from there.
Under production, my duties consist of setting up the camera, making sure that it looks good, making sure the shots are presented the way the producer and the director want it to look.
We just have to get talent in, you know, basic makeup. They are, you know, DOD guys. It's not like you powder them up too much.
Being called talent just by virtue of the name alone conjures up some kind of capability that sometimes is a little difficult to handle.
You see how red he is?
That was the terminology that they started using on Carp and I as talent, but I guess I had a hard time absorbing that one, so probably didn't take it too seriously.
Dick and Carp had to take a 2 to 3 hour presentation to a live audience and condense it to 46 minutes.
The beginning, the very first take, I think Dick and I both felt pretty nervous.
I felt like that working with no audience really other than the people that were filming and so forth, and working in front of a green screen probably was a little more difficult to put any life or energy into it. It was pretty easy to sit there, and then when it came your time to answer a question, to be somewhat flat just because you're talking to a big empty room. You know, that was a different experience for sure.
You're looking at an audience and they're looking at nothing. They have to perform, they have to pretend like the dinosaur is getting ready to eat them, but there's no dinosaur there.
You know, being able to put a conscious stream together with no audience there to feed off of and all that kind of very different. You kind of feel like you got to get it right the first time. You can't stammer or stumble.
on your words.
We needed to get the 45 minutes of Dick and Carp going through the presentation. You have to shoot it a couple different times, couple different angles.
When we do the moving shot, the computer can track the change in the background and keeps our background plate in the right aspect for the camera's position.
Dick and Carp knew exactly what they had to present and exactly how they would present it because they've done it so many times.
From our experience in doing this before and what we knew we needed to say in reaction to Dan's questions, I think we did a pretty good job of getting the word out. I mean, we're not actors. We didn't script this thing, you know, and I wouldn't think it will come across that way. Hopefully it'll come out informative but natural in the way that we portrayed the answers to the questions that we wanted to.
Cool. You ready?
I'm ready to do it.
You ready to roll?
Roll. Let's do it. Roll.
This particular shoot was one of the most arduous of any of our DoD shoots. It was a day of Dick and Carp doing their presentation, and then it was a day of multiple Dans, which was crazy. It worked, but it was crazy because it was like Dan dressing in like 12 different outfits, you know, sitting in different spots in front of different green screens, shot from different angles.
And Dan just, you know, you gotta bless his heart for the amount of patience that he has.
Seat 1, second sticks, marker.
And he just hangs in there and he just wants to get it done because he's got so much passion for corrosion and making sure that everybody here's his message.
I've done multiple Dans in the past, not in this kind of fashion. It lasts for 12 seconds, not 45 minutes.
I don't mind being in front of the camera. In fact, I like it because I believe in what I do, and so I like being in front of the camera because I'm trying to convince people this is important. So I'd come up with 15 questions that would help us to really get the point across.
He had a little subtle different acting with each one of his people, which was great.
I think Dan did an awesome job in capturing different characters.
Well, I think having 9 different Dans came pretty natural. You know, a lot of people say that Dan's a whole lot of different people, so, you know, he played that role well.
You know, of course, you have rain. You know, it's Florida. It rains at 5 o'clock every day.
What is a contractor corrosion team, and what does it do?
There was thunder in the last one.
That was craziness in and of itself, but then we had to worry about the green screen and whether or not everything was going to key correctly.
We actually did a camera test in the morning where we wanted to make sure the setup was going to work the way we planned on shooting it. So we put a green screen mat behind Dan as well as on the floor under him, and when we brought it into the Avid room, I put the test together and everybody, the lighting guys and everybody came in and we looked at it and we decided that it was fine.
One of the elements that I knew we were going to have a problem with, but it happened later in the day, we were shooting one of the Dans and we realized that we don't have any green underneath the chair.
Which made compositing a lot harder because the lighting changed from setup to setup, which changed the color of the floor underneath each Dan.
At that moment, we knew that when we go to key this, we were going to possibly have a serious problem.
It was a longer shoot than we're used to. It was hard work. It was different, but it was a lot of fun.
It all went pretty well. Got done early. You know, everything's in the can, and now it's like, okay, well, let's make the Dans interact with each other. So I take a piece of paper and I wad it up and give it to one of the Dans and says, you know, throw it at the other Dan.
That's a great question.
Laughing at other Dans, looking at other Dans, some rack focus stuff from Dan to Dan. Some of the stuff that you would think would be natural and add some humor in there.
Dan looks like he's having a good time, and it keeps it entertaining throughout what is not necessarily the most entertaining material.
It's because you have to hit on those topic points. It has to be boring sometimes because you have to say the real information, and real information sometimes is boring.
You know, I think everybody came together and they had a good time and they did a good job, and I think it's going to show in the final product.
So now it comes down to the hard stuff. 45 minutes of multiple Dans. Crazy idea. This is when you go like, what did I do?
The editing in particular on this project, we had to go about a little different way than things we would normally edit because this has a lot of effect shots.
First thing we did is just do a cut of Dick and Carp. No audience, they're in front of a green screen, and we just did a 45-minute cut of the actual content.
There were places in there where I felt like I was pretty flat. However, you know, and then I stumbled for words a lot of times, but what was amazing is the little bit of editing I've seen, it looks like that you can edit that kind of thing out.
You know, what I want to do is make sure that the content that you guys talked about is said well, we took the right takes, it makes sense.
And as we went through things, we got a chance to see how that was going to work. It became more intriguing as to how that was going to actually show up in the video.
Once the content edit was approved, then we could actually start working on the multiple Dan shots.
So we're going to go through the shot where Dan is throwing a piece of paper at himself. You can see Shane, our director, right there.
How fast can I get my corrosion prevention control program institutionalized?
That's a great question. Now our other layer is Dan actually throwing the paper. And it looks
How
like
fast
this.
can I get my corrosion prevention control program institutionalized?
That's a great question. So you can see he actually throws nothing at the other Dan. He just motioned that he was going to throw. So the first thing I'm going to do is do a quick key. We're just going to make sure we line the shots up to make it look natural. Crop Shane out here. Right to about right where his hand is. Now, we're going to want to put him exactly where Shane was, so... And we'll see what it looks like right now. So you can see that he's not in the right spot right now, so we need to just move his layer. Maybe right there? Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So we'll just render it here and see if it's going to work for us, then we'll go back and actually do the more professional key so it doesn't have some of the artifacts that are still here. Here's what the shot looks like when it's all composited.
How fast can I get my corrosion prevention control program institutionalized?
That's a great question. I'll tell you the first, and that is that. Keys look better, the throw looks good, and we're good.
For a lot of years I've worked in corrosion, and suddenly with a group together that all are energized and all have a different skill set, together we're really being able to make something happen that hadn't happened in my 30 years previously.
I'm hoping that if nothing else, it gets the juices flowing in their brains about how to do this and gets them started down the road of looking for the people that can really help them put into effect a good corrosion prevention control program.
We have to go from the find and fix mentality to prevent, detect, predict, and manage. And it's these productions and other things we have going on that's in the strategic plan make it happen.
You know, when you watch Dick and Carp and Dan and, you know, some other players, when you watch them watching the final footage and you know, you see that smile and you know that we did it, wow. So a lot of credit goes to a lot of people for making this happen.
The multiple Dans asking the questions really helped, but also how we intercut the PowerPoint presentations themselves and some of the diagrams and stuff. I think it's very understandable and still entertaining and something that can live on for a long time.
All in all, I thought it was a successful project, and I can't wait to work on the next one for the government.
You know, a lot of hard work, and it really shows, but there's passion. You know, everybody enjoyed what they did, and it shows in the end, and it's a project we can be proud of.
Give me a hug and say, that's a wrap? Yay! Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.